also a very powerful personal story. So he hopped right in to just help all the NIAC students. So when you hear the signal thing going on, it's probably Zane, right? So I thought it would be really great to push and challenge Zane, who's a mentor, a mentee of mine, and a mentor in some ways, to speak about his experience working with this group of NIAC students before we do the three presentations that will follow. So y'all give it up for Zane.
Hi everyone.
Hey.
So my name is Zane, and yeah, as Tim mentioned, I reached out to him, just asking to get involved, and I sent an email, and I believe the response that I got in that email was, OMG, I would love that. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and I've been the research and public policy manager for NIAC. So I've been working with these students and providing guidance and supporting them in their project development. And I cannot thank Tim enough for giving me the platform and the opportunity to speak about my story and my experiences and just, my involvement with this program. So I think if you saw the earlier presentation today and with the presentations that you're about to see, right now and also earlier, or tomorrow as well. I think one of the most impressive things in these presentations is that we'll all come out of this with something that we're, first of all, have learned to do, and also something that we can connect to and we can relate with. And I think that speaks a lot of power into what these students are doing right now. They're having these conversations, they're talking about real world issues that are happening in their communities, and they're giving us suggestions for how we can interact with them, and they're asking us how we can best support them as well. So as you'll see, and as you have seen, they're doing diligent research, they're listening to lived experiences, and they're using curiosity to drive their visions. And they're showing all of us what can happen when we advocate for our communities through collaboration and creativity. So the project earlier and also the projects you're about to see exemplify what I believe to be one of the greatest strengths of this group. They're showing that complex, critical analysis can be met with care, it can be met with compassion and intentionality. And all of these students are doing really incredible work to create these innovative solutions to their community's most pressing issues. And it's been an incredibly fulfilling experience watching these students grow, watching their confidence grow, and watching how they're leaning on each other for support. And I'm really excited for you all to continue to witness the upcoming projects that they're producing. So a little bit of background about myself. I graduated from UMass Amherst a few years ago, so I'm not relatively that much older than these students. But my advocacy origins began at the same age that most of these students are. So in high school, I began organizing with classmates, and the first thing I did was I started a news chain among my peers. So I was distributing daily news updates about what was happening in the US. It was met with a lot of pushback from my school administration, but we continued to do it. I also organized my school's walkout during the National Student-Led Movement for Gun Control at the time. And I also worked to change my high school's policies around gender spaces and gendered school life celebrations. So when I reflect on that time in my life, I'm not exactly sure what sparked that fire in me. And my organizing, my advocacy definitely look a lot different now than what they did back then. But I can say that I was grounded in this unwavering commitment to believing that there had to be a better future for all of us. And I believed in people, and I believed in community, and I still very much do. It can be challenging at times, especially right now, but I really do. And as I work with these students, I see that same fire. And it's been so inspiring to watch the fire develop and take new shape. And at the same time, they're remaining authentic to who they are and what they believe in. So after high school, I studied both music and queer and trans studies in college. My undergraduate research was situated at the intersection of both disciplines. So as a trans musician myself, I'm especially interested in how the embodied experiences of being trans and creating music are intrinsically linked, and how this is reinforced through the arc of music history and also trans liberation movements. And as I delved deeper into these areas of study, I became just enamored with the process of research and the vast explorations of abstract theory. And this also coincided with the very beginnings of me medically transitioning. So in a lot of ways, queer and trans theory showed me the possibilities of what my life could look like. And it showed me the stories of the elders that I could not have the conversations with, that I wanted to be having these conversations with. And it challenged me to think critically about myself and my community. And me coming into my transness will always be rooted in my community and the people who I'm directly in community with, and also the ancestors that I don't know personally. And in a lot of ways, I owe a lot of my transition to the very overwhelming amount of critical writing I was engaging with at the time. So as my transition journey progressed, also did the trans issues that we currently know them as they're becoming more and more visible in the public eye. So we're seeing the environments of anti-trans legislation that we're currently faced with. And I just want to make it clear that this violence has always been here, and it's been particularly inflicted upon Black and brown trans women. And we also know that increased public visibility in the mainstream media outlets are leading to this very strange combination of this both an obsession and a repulsion of transness. And we're witnessing the rise of research institutions releasing these medical studies, they're releasing population surveys, and they're releasing policy analysis, and that's ranging anywhere from very explicit violent transphobia to these institutions who are just trying to do the basic task of proving that a group of people exists. And basically, coming from a world of abstract theory, I was seeing the impacts of quantitative research, and I was watching these people use the numbers and data that they had to justify their opinions about trans people. And it was clear that a lot of cis people in power are not going to listen to the lived experiences of trans people, and particularly Black and brown trans people. But these numbers seem to be catching people's attention in both good and bad ways. I became increasingly interested in doing this type of research, and I began to seek out opportunities to engage with it. So the first thing I did was reaching out to UCLA's School of Law's Williams Institute, and that's an independent research institute that is researching gender identity and sexual orientation in the US as it pertains to public policy and law. And then after assisting them in the research project, I reached out to them looking for more opportunities to get involved. And this is when my involvement with NIAC began. I learned about the research initiatives of the National Center for Civil Human Rights, and I was really inspired by the center's commitment to the 4 pillars that NIAC is founded on: intersectionality, research, advocacy, history, and public policy. And when I found out that they had a specifically LGBTQ institute, I reached out. So when Tim asked me to speak at this event about my experiences working with these students and working on their projects, I immediately knew something that I wanted to bring up, because literally less than 12 hours before this conversation, I went to a book talk I'm currently living in Chicago, and I went to a book talk hosted by a Swan group in the area. And we talked about the book, Everything for Everyone, and one of the co-authors of that book led a discussion. And we talked about the power of centering imagination in our current organizing movements. And we talked about the tradition of speculative fiction writer Octavia Butler, talked about her legacy and how we can use that framework in the current moment that we're at. And so I left this conversation feeling really inspired, and I reflected on the areas of my life where that framework is happening. And one of the things that came up was NIAC. And one of the most extraordinary things I've seen these young students do with their project is they're utilizing this similar framework. They're assessing where they are, they understand what they want to change, they're using their imagination to create a future that they believe in, and they're organizing to get there. They all come from a really wide range of lived experiences, and they all bring essential perspectives to the conversations they're having. And as you'll see in these presentations, and as you saw in the one earlier from this morning, they're coming together and using the resources that they have. So they're using their lived experiences, their backgrounds, their frameworks of thinking, and they're coming together, and organizing, sorry, oh my goodness. They're organizing, oh my goodness, why? There's something stuck in my throat, so sorry. They're organizing around that to build new worlds. And the way that they're engaging with these projects is the way that thank you so much, is the way that I would like to be engaging with my community. So although I'm relatively not much older than these students, I'm really grateful to be able to pass along any knowledge and ideas that I have and hopefully provide support and mentorship to them. I know that I would not be here without the knowledge of those who came before me, and this is something that I know very deeply as a trans person and also as a musician. During my time working with NIAC, I've seen how the guidance provided by the program mentors has helped these students grow and expand their ways of thinking. And I've personally had the opportunity to receive a lot of mentorship from Tim, who has provided me invaluable advice and support as I navigate the next chapter of my life, which is I'll be applying to graduate school to further pursue queer and trans research. So I hope to pass along this mentorship tradition so that the people who come after me can envision the life that they want to live and create it with care and intention. So the presentations that you're about to see are extremely creative. These projects are desperately needed, especially right now. And they lay a blueprint for how we can use our experiences and our minds to build something bigger than ourselves. They're showing us how we can create community across difference and how we can work together to imagine a future not yet built. And they're addressing a wide range of issues prevalent to the present moment. They're talking about food justice, censorship, connection between race and body autonomy laws, gentrification, and so many more complex and intersecting topics. It's been a really honor, and a joy working with these students, and I cannot emphasize enough that if you have literally a 10-second conversation with any one of them, you'll understand just how expansively they're thinking about themselves and their world. So yeah, please engage in a conversation with them today. So I would love to introduce Bella and Lydia up to present their presentation.
Very professional. Well, hello everybody. We are very excited to have you all listen to our wonderful presentations today. My name is Bella, this is Lydia, and today we are going to be presenting our project, Greener Futures, Fairer Neighborhoods. So, like I said, my name is Bella. I'm a senior in high school, and I came all the way from Westchester, New York for this. I spend a lot of my time playing volleyball, and I love to bake. So, little fun facts.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and go to Midtown High School, and I enjoy playing the cello.
So pretty much, we're going to be talking about the 4 pillars that are represented throughout NIAC and how they are integrated into our presentation. And just the baseline of our presentation is going to be on housing insecurity and how it's affected by environmental justice, which we will expand on, obviously, in this presentation. So please enjoy.
So the image you see here before you, nearly a century ago, was a hub for manufacturing, factories, as well as railroads. However, after a 2006 Georgia Tech thesis, it became known as the Beltline. And today, the Beltline is used as a sustainable walkway connecting many areas of Atlanta. This is a better representation of what it looks like today. It has truly flourished, but at what cost? Yes, it's more sustainable, and yes, it's more environmentally friendly, but in order to achieve where it is today, it had to push out residents, particularly those who were Black and low income. And this has been the story for many environmental developments nowadays. environmental sustainability is prioritized over economic sustainability. Believe it or not, these two areas are on the same exact street. The area on the left has a high percentage of unhoused people, while the area on the right is considered perfectly safe to walk around and engage in activities.
So pretty much intersectionality is this network of connections between social categories, which can include like race, ethnicity, gender, and oftentimes the interaction of these social categories will result in discrimination or disadvantages for certain parties. So pretty much one of the issues that we're focusing on is in Atlanta, oftentimes gentrification is correlated with the removal or like oftentimes the low income residents that originally lived in the neighborhood, which oftentimes are Black residents, get displaced from their neighborhood due to issues such as like systematic racism and just issues within the developing companies. And as we can see, Fox 5 Atlanta shows a statistic in which between 1980 and 2020, Atlanta has lost 22,000 Black residents, which is the 5th highest loss in the U.S. metro areas, which pretty much just shows that this is like a large scale issue, not only in Atlanta, but Atlanta is one of the most prominent areas of the U.S. So pretty much this is a reality for many of the residents living in Atlanta, and while this is very disadvantageous to many of the residents living in the area, the developers see it as a method of profit where they can take these low-income properties, buy them for a cheaper cost, and attract higher-income residents so that they can make a better profit. And in a very specific study run by the Public Institute of Health, they found that Black residents are more vulnerable to these developers because they don't know the value of their homes, and therefore it's cheaper for developers to buy the property off of them. And as you can see in this picture, it's a representation of like this like segregation between the low-income neighborhoods and how developers will buy off properties and just expand these larger, more like nicer areas, which will attract higher income residents, and the low-income residents that originally lived in the area can no longer live there because they can't afford it. Research. So pretty much our research is focused on the unintended consequences of environmental improvements in the neighborhood. So these environmental improvements can include like air quality, access to green spaces, and by trying to improve these environmental qualities, instead of improving quality of life for the residents living in the area, oftentimes they get displaced because of it. So me and Lydia, through our research, are hoping to find practical approaches to improving environmental factors without displacing the original residents.
So essentially, using the information that we've gathered from our sources and partner organizations, we're going to create a research paper. And to add a more creative aspect, we're going to create our own urban plan, taking into consideration everything we've learned about the intersection of environmental sustainability, demographics, race, and also economics and finance.
So our partner organization is East Lakes Foundation, which pretty much they have done a community housing project, as you can see here, which is the East Lake Commons, and we hope to use some of their research and their insight to help incorporate that into our project and into our urban housing planning, so that hopefully we can create something environmentally sustainable based on some of their research.
Some other partners that we'd like to potentially partner with is the Atlanta Beltline, since a lot of our research that we've already done has centered around them, the Piedmont Land Conservancy, and Trees Atlanta, as these are all environmental organizations that we think would be beneficial in furthering our research.
Public policy. So an example of public policy within Atlanta is inclusionary zoning, which was implemented in 2018 in Atlanta, and pretty much the basis of the idea is that these large developing companies have to set aside a certain amount of their housing at a lower cost so that people in the community, such as like teachers or like government employees that have lower incomes, are still able to afford to live in Atlanta and can still help the community because obviously they're necessary in Atlanta. And as you can see, this applies to like really big developers, so developers that have at least 10 units, they have to provide housing to these lower income residents so that they're able to continue living in Atlanta and are able to pretty much afford the housing. And also this is mutually beneficial because as part of the policy, when these larger companies, they give off part of their housing at a lower price, the government will help them out and they'll help them like develop bigger housing facilities so that they're able to incorporate more low-income residents so that they can have more low-income residents continue to live in Atlanta.
Another policy that was enacted recently is called the Atlanta Displacement Tax Fund. And as of last month, the Atlanta Displacement Tax Fund carries nearly $10 million in hopes of helping elderly individuals pay off the rising property tax rates. And to be eligible, you have to be over 60 years old. And the main goal of this is really to prevent displacement, especially among elderly people who generally have fixed incomes due to inability to work or being retired. And so far, as of September, $30,000 in taxes were already covered. So we hope to use policies like these to inspire our research. And our next steps are first gaining more connections and partnerships, since that will be very beneficial towards our research, and then we will ultimately start our research project after we have a good foundation. And if you want to contact us, or if you have any insight or help, or if you can help us, here are our emails. Mine is on the left and Bella's is on the right, and we would greatly appreciate your help and insight. And these are the sources we used to create the presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming. We're really excited to show you our project. Our project is
Rights in Real Time.
My name is Ava,
I'm Jay.
and enjoy. So, Rights in Real Time plans to explore how social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram shapes youth understanding of global human rights issues. It also plans to trace the historical shifts in the U.S. and how U.S. citizens have access to international human rights information from print media to digital age. And Rights in Real Time also plans to conduct original research, including student surveys, try to assess levels of global awareness among high schoolers as well, and highlight gaps in knowledge and representation with a focus on intersectionality and marginalized voices. Lastly, Rights in Real Time plans to propose a digital tool or app to deliver accessible, fact-based human rights content and promote youth advocacy. So our partner organization is the Human Rights Watch, specifically Human Rights Watch Los Angeles, and they are an international non-governmental organization that investigates and reports on human rights violations around the world. They advocate for justice, freedom, and human dignity using research and media to influence policy and public awareness. And the relevance to our project is that our project explores the impact of social media on human rights, and Human Rights Watch has published extensive work on how social media platforms affect these rights globally, making their insights and research highly relevant to our focus. And the next steps for this organization is that as we develop our project further, we plan to reach out to this organization to explore for potential input, resources, and/or collaboration. So key events that kind of shape and contextualize our project and its focus for equal rights include the civil rights sit-ins in the 1960s, which occurred in the United States during the civil rights movement. So these were peaceful protests by students challenging racial segregation in public spaces, especially at lunch counters. These sit-ins ignited national attention and helped dismantle Jim Crow laws through persistent nonviolent resistance, which is also very important to the National Center for Civil and Human Rights and what they try to spread awareness about. And also the March on Washington, which occurred in 1963 in the United States. This was a massive demonstration where over 250,000 people gathered to demand civil and economic rights for African Americans. It set the stage for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic I Have a Dream speech and played a pivotal role in the passing of the Civil Rights Acts in 1964. And finally, the anti-apartheid movement in the 1950s to the 1990s, which occurred in South Africa and also global, was a global campaign against South Africa's system of racial segregation. Through protests, boycotts, and international pressure, it contributed to the end of apartheid and the rise of a democratic South Africa led by Nelson Mandela. So in general, these movements prove the power of organized, nonviolent protests in confronting injustice. They not only changed laws, but also inspired global solidarity and ongoing struggles for human rights. And about credibility and disinformation before social media kind of blew up. So before social media transformed the informational landscape, credibility in media was largely shaped by editorial standards in newspapers, so magazines and broadcast news also, and professional journalism ethics, which includes fact-checking and sourcing and verification, gatekeeping by editors and institutions that filtered what reached the public and what they did not know and did not receive, and public trust in legacy outlets like the New York Times, BBC, or CBS News. However, even in the system, bias and disinformation existed through propaganda, selective coverage, or political influence. The key difference, though, is that disinformation spread more slowly and was easier to trace back to the source. Now, in the age of social media, information spreads instantly, often without verification, making it harder to distinguish fact from fiction. Understanding what made media credible before the digital age helps us evaluate what's trustworthy today. So, intersectionality for our project is media as a catalyst for human rights. Media has long shaped the public's understanding of justice and injustice. From newspapers to viral videos, it has amplified movements, exposed abuses, and mobilized global attention. So for the civil rights movement, a better example, televised coverage of police violence during protests really shocked the nation and also gained support for reform in their cause. And journalists played a key role in documenting segregation, resistance, and Black voices demanding change. And today, in the digital age, social media allows real-time witnesses of these injustices, and it also creates space for misinformation, digital surveillance, and distraction. So the power of media, old and new, lies in its ability to tell human stories, build empathy, and demand accountability.
So moving on to global movements in the context of social media. So first we have hashtag Bring Back Our Girls, which was set in 2014 in Nigeria, which was a viral hashtag brought international attention to the kidnapping of 276 schoolgirls. So the next one is a really large movement that was set in America, but it was globalized. Hashtag Black Lives Matter, obviously catalyzed by, obviously reinvigorated by George Floyd in 2020. And then we have hashtag Masa
a protest in Iran in 2022, which after Mahsa Amini died in police custody, videos spread all over social media, and despite heavy censorship, this sparked widespread protests led by women and youth under the slogan "Women, Life, and Freedom." So the power and responsibility of media today. So in a world where anything can be published, shared, or go viral, we're all just a part of the media ecosystem. And so that power, that power comes with responsibility. So as consumers, we need to question our sources, and we need to watch for bias, as well as verify anything before sharing it so that we don't spread misinformation. And then as creators, we need to understand that we need to use our platforms to amplify underrepresented stories and grassroots voices, as well as remember that a single post can educate, mislead, or mobilize. And media doesn't just reflect the world, it helps shape it. So by engaging critically and ethically, youth people can turn media into a force for justice. So our prior research on human rights in media. So research from the Pew Research Center, APA, NIH, and Sage Journal shows media's role in promoting awareness of human rights. Specifically, Sage Journal specifically published studies on how digital media shapes teen political interest, identity, and civic engagement. So what we need to recognize is that increased political engagement is linked to greater access to social justice content, which encourages youth activism and identity development, as well as that online communities are vital spaces for support, identity affirmation, and activism, especially for underrepresented groups. And then human rights and public policy. So a key example of public policy that we found was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this was not a treaty, but it's like a consensus that several countries under the UN came to, that we must recognize that everyone, no matter where they're from, which nation, or any social identifiers, that everyone is entitled to those rights. So then our next steps for rights in real time. For our project development, we aim to consistently create and share meaningful content on our socials that we will share with you. We aim to grow and we want to grow and engage and involve the community. We want to actively interact with our viewers to spark awareness and conversation. And what we hope to gain from NIA. We want to deepen our understanding of human rights, not only in the context of media, but as a universal issue. And then we want to gain knowledge and guidance from professionals and peers in the human rights space. And then we also want to strengthen our ability to advocate for human rights through impactful storytelling and digital outreach. So here we have our socials. We currently have a TikTok and Instagram linked over there. You can scan the QR codes to follow. Please remember that following is the best way to support us and to get in contact with our future content.
Any questions before we end? And we also have a third partner, Maya. She's also in our group. She unfortunately cannot make it, but she will also be contributing a lot of the global human rights aspect.
Yeah. And our emails are linked here if you have any questions that you want to email to us, or if you want us live to send them to you. Thank you.
I think we got one more presentation, and let's all give them a round of applause as they come up.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Dylan Rubier, and this is my partner. our project is called Message in Our Music, and basically we're making like a, well, I'll explain later. Let's get to the next slide. Wait, oops. Alright, so this is what we're going to go over in our presentation. First, we're talking about us, and then our project, and then our goals with our project, and then our future, and then what you can do to help us. Alright, this is my partner, Sinead Johnson.
Hello, it's nice to meet you. My name is Sinead Johnson. Something you'll find out about me if you know me is that I love music. It's one of my absolute favorite things. I've been playing music since I was a child. I've been in marching band since I started high school. It's absolutely one of my passions, and that's part of why we chose this project.
Yeah, I'm Dylan Rumier, and music is one of my passions too. I currently run an organization called Jazz for Equity, where we go to marginalized and under-resourced schools and we teach them how to play jazz. And I'm also involved in a lot of other music things, but it's okay, I don't have to mention them.
Alright, so about message in our music, this is going to be exploring the intersectionality of music and social change, focusing on 10 influential songs across 5 different areas, which is racial justice, women's rights, environmental rights, human rights, and LGBTQ rights. We created lesson plans to provide educators with historical backgrounds, and guiding questions, classroom activities, and etc.
Our goals with with Message in Our Music is to, one, educate. So what we want to do is assist students in exploring the history of civil rights and social justice movements across the world, help them recognize how music has inspired resistance, build solidarity, and amplify marginalized voices. But we also want to inspire these youth and empower them to fight for their rights and face social justice head on. And last but not least, of course, we want to honor these musicians and their legacy and their history.
Alright, so a topic that I covered was, one of the songs that I covered was Respect with Aretha Franklin. So it became an anthem for both women's rights and civil rights. It was released in 1967 in the height of both movements, but it was actually created by Otis Redding, who made it to be asking for respect from his woman or his wife or whatever. And Miss Franklin, she took that idea and she made it less so about asking for respect from a partner, but demanding and taking respect from the world, both as a woman and a Black woman at that. Which historically, Black women have always been given a shorter end of the stick than most other people. It became a defining moment in her career, with her winning multiple Grammys, with her getting on the Billboard Top 100 for 2 weeks, I believe, and it became a symbol for Black pride and women's independence. Something that keeps happening. It's continued to be used throughout history in protests, marches. It's not just 1960s and it's it. She continues to be brought up even after her death, even after the issues that she wrote about and that she sung about, they got better.
Alright, that was a bit about the song. But anyways, one of the songs that I covered and I made a lesson plan for is Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. And it was, some historical context for the song is that it was written during a period of rampant racial violence and segregation in the South, where Black people were being lynched, unfortunately. and it reflects the larger ongoing civil rights movement in the 20th century. And it was initially written by a Jewish teacher who was disturbed after seeing the image of 2 black kids being lynched. And Holiday felt inspired by this, so she decided to record the song. And she faced major pushback from, I guess, mass media, and Columbia Records wouldn't let her release the song. And she was also framed by the Federal Bureau of Narcotics Commissioner Harry Aslinger, and essentially they planted heroin on her and got her arrested, and she later died in custody, which is very unfortunate. And this song has served as, I guess, symbol of racial empowerment and protest throughout history.
So our future plans with this project, we intend to widen the collection. As of right now, we have 10 different songs across 5 different areas. Maybe one day that can be 5 different songs. One day that can be 15 different songs to 20 to 25 across some other areas, not only to give voice to the underrepresented, but to the underrepresented issues and not just the underrepresented people. We plan on creating a website so that we can share this not only with educators, but just people who want to educate themselves. And we can expand by collaborating with schools and colleges who might want to put this in their classes. It doesn't have to be just one class. This can be in either. It can be used in music class. It can be used in social justice, sociology, social issues. It can even be used in just a general history class.
Now, what can you do and how can you support us? All right, so first, you can share the lesson plans with the people around you. If you know any teachers, you can tell them about it, and you can give it to them. And you can also inspire change in your local community. You can speak out about current injustices going on and past injustices too. You can spread awareness of the ongoing civil rights movement. You can also support organized movements and protests, and you can go out and fight for change yourself. And also you can stay well informed. It's really important because you have to be well informed to, I guess, fight for change. And does anyone have any questions?
So, something I realized we forgot, we didn't actually include any contact information. So if you wanted to reach out, I'm going to tell you my email so that, if you really wanted to reach out and give information or give feedback or even ask questions that you're comfortable sharing in person, you can do that online. So my email is ShanaeJ2008, I know it's embarrassing, @gmail.com. So I'm going to spell that for you if you needed to write it down or if you wanted to write it down. It's SHANAEJ2008, the @gmail.com. Thank you.
And if you want my email, you can approach me after this.
Let's give our young people a hand again, you all. So I think we're at the end of day 1 of the IGNYTE conference, and to close us out, we have someone who I was told about. I was at Out on Film last week. Those people that don't know Out on Film is Atlanta's largest LGBTQ plus film festival, and they had just got through with awesome 11 days of both online content as well as in-person film screenings by independent LGBTQ plus filmmakers, actors, producers, and our allies. And I had a chance to run across this wonderful, wonderful lady who's a fabulous actress. And she started telling me about her son and everything like that. He's running for Board of Education, yada, yada. And I'm like, I happen to get this follow on social media. I'm like, Royce. I said, okay. So we're going to have a final words from Royce Mann, who's a part of the Georgia Youth Advocacy Fellowship. He's a community organizer, youth activist. He was a former legislative director at March of Our Lives, Georgia, and youth engagement coordinator for Senator Raphael Warnock's campaign. He was recognized as Grand Marshal of Atlanta Pride in 2019, and he is currently running for the Atlanta Board of Education to become the youngest person elected to a city-wide office. Let's welcome Royce Mann in the house.
Thank you so much, everyone. It is wonderful to be here today. I was honestly stressing a bit about what I was going to say, and Tim M knows this. I think he woke up to a text this morning from me that read, "Good morning, Tim M. I wanted to see if you might have a minute to touch base about my keynote sooner than later. I'm honestly really stressing about it and feel that I don't have anything good to say." And it was a few minutes after sending this that I realized that after years of speaking in rooms like this to other young people about the power of their voice, I had forgotten the power of my own. And I'm here to tell you that my story is worth hearing, and so is yours. Now, it took me a long time to realize this. Despite being raised by parents who always encouraged me to be outspoken, I had a unique upbringing. I am a white, straightish, though constantly questioning cisgender male, born and raised in Atlanta to two bisexual performing artists. I grew up in an intentional community surrounded by queer folks, including my bi and lesbian godmothers and trans babysitter. I knew about the Kinsey scale before I learned about the periodic table. I was surrounded by activists and was pushed in strollers at numerous marches and rallies. But for years, I still didn't realize the power that I already held. Now, this changed on one fateful day in 8th grade. The school I was at hosted an annual poetry slam for junior high students. And that year, I was performing in the finals in front of all of my classmates. And my life changed in two ways that day. First, I won the poetry slam, and the video of my poem, a piece I wrote called White Boy Privilege, went viral over the following months. I was catapulted into an extended 15 minutes of fame, invited to speak at conferences across the country and on to talk shows. But the second way that my life changed is I received a very simple yet very valuable lesson. It came from a man named Jossie Ross, a Seattle-based poet and activist who was the guest judge that day for our poetry slam. And he looked to the room of 7th and 8th graders and he said, "You are not the leaders of tomorrow. You are the leaders of today." And I thought this was very cliche, to be honest. But months later, this message would really help pull me out of a deep depression. You see, when I went viral, I immediately started feeling a profound sense of imposter syndrome. I was 14 and was being asked to speak on issues of race, class, and gender, issues I was still learning about and coming to understand the intersections between. What kept me going in many ways were Jossie's words. This message was the reminder I needed that no matter how unpolished my perspective was, that it was still valuable as a young person. It mattered not despite the fact that young people are rarely included in discussions of important social and political issues, but because of this fact. It also served as motivation. I was being trusted as a messenger for justice, but I wasn't yet an organizer. And now, knowing the power of my words, I was excited to realize the power of the work. I slowly began to turn down speaking engagements, instead opting to spend my time organizing rather than simply speaking on the issues I was passionate about. I organized walkouts at my school to stand up against gun violence. I joined Amnesty International. I remember there's someone earlier who talked about running an Amnesty International club. I joined Amnesty and started a club at the school I would transfer to later. And most importantly, I found other passionate and progressive students ready to work in coalition to claim our collective power. We organized what was called the Atlanta March for Our Lives. It started right outside. It was about 50,000 people marching through downtown Atlanta demanding an end to gun violence. I served as one of the leaders of that movement, was honored to introduce Congressman John Lewis when he spoke. And for the next 3 years, I worked with the Georgia chapter of March for Our Lives as the legislative director at the state level, trying to bring young people face to face with lawmakers to talk about the issues that directly affect us. And in that work, I saw firsthand the power that young voices have. There are a lot of old folks in government. And when you bring young voices into the room, we begin to be the conscience. We remind those older elected officials and older folks in power of the hope, of the optimism, of the empathy that so many of them used to have. And that's what makes our voices so powerful, and is the reason that folks work so hard to silence young people. Now, if you don't believe me, we can just look at history. Claudette Colvin was just 15 years old when she refused to give up her seat on a bus. And if you don't know, it was because she did that later Rosa Parks would do the same. John Lewis was only 23 when he spoke at the March on Washington. From the civil rights movement to anti-war protests to the Stonewall uprising, young people have always been at the forefront of change in this country, and that is why those in power work overtime to silence us. We as young people have been intentionally conditioned to believe that our voices hold no power, that our lived experiences are invalid, and that we have no role in shaping the decisions that affect us most directly. This is especially true for LGBTQIA+ youth and other young people who have historically been marginalized, including people of color, individuals with disabilities, those from low-income backgrounds, those who are undocumented, and especially those who live at the intersections of these identities. Now, if you hear nothing else that I say, hear this. If your voice had no power, no one would be working to silence you. If your voice had only limited power, there would not be efforts at every level of government to suppress you. Your power knows no bounds beyond those put in place by the people and systems working against you, and trust me when I say that these bounds are breakable. So I don't want to take up too much more time, but again, it is an honor to be here. I am only here because I realized that my voice had power, because a video of me in 8th grade went viral and people said, we actually want to listen to him. So go and claim your power. And when you feel resistance, recognize that that is just a demonstration of how powerful you can be. Politicians like to talk so much about how young people turn up to vote in such low numbers. It's because they're scared of what would happen if we turned out in higher numbers. And so I want to close with a spoken word piece. It's called Rise Up. I wrote it a few years ago, but I think it's still relevant today. Let's rise up. Let's rise up with those overlooked and undervalued by society. The black man who walks down the street on the way to his job, it's his first day as an 8th grade English teacher. The same black man who has a son, his pride and joy, who told that son that life will be hard, but anything is possible. The man who walks down the street on the way to his job only to pass a white woman clutching her purse a little too tightly. Let's rise up with the boy labeled girl at birth. The boy who always wore dresses that never felt right. You see, no matter the size, they always seemed too tight. The boy with the parents who claimed to love their daughter only to disown their son. Let's rise up with the Muslim woman who works for the Justice Department only to experience injustice every time she wears a hijab. Let's rise up and lend a hand to the boy who can't. The boy who sits in a wheelchair watching the other kids play basketball, the boy who becomes the only one in his class to win an Olympic gold medal. Let's rise up with the woman who was born in the U.S., whose parents are Dominican, and whose son is an All-American linebacker, so why is she repeatedly told to go back to Mexico? Let's even rise up with the poor white boy. The one who is told he is privileged but doesn't feel that way, and yes, this boy does exist. The boy who talks about the pool his family doesn't have and wears the shoes his mother can't afford. He was given everything, right? So it must be his fault, right? Wrong, because as one YouTube comment read, life can be hard if you're white, but life will never be hard because you're white. Let's rise up with a girl who crossed the border in her mother's arms when she was 3. In search of the American dream, a nightmare is what it's often seemed to be. Nevertheless, she persisted and earned her college degree. Let's rise up with a young Native American poet. She speaks wisdom, but rarely do people listen. The poet who should be up here right now, but who instead has to hear a white boy speak of her struggle and triumph. Let's rise up. Because once we do, that glass ceiling will be in reach, and trust me, it is breakable. Once we do, we will be able to see over any wall, no matter who pays for it. Let's rise up. Because wait is never a valid response to injustice. Because inequality thrives at the sight of a head turned away, because a head is the only way we can afford to go, because bystanders are never innocent in the face of oppression. Let's rise up. Let's rise up out of the comfort of our own homes. From behind our screens of privilege, because 140 characters cannot defeat hatred. Let's rise up to our elected officials, into the streets where change has for centuries been born. Let's rise up. Because if we don't, who will? Because if we don't, who will? Because if we don't, no one will. We must have the will to fight. Martin dreamt and woke up the world. Claudette and Rosa sat when it meant taking a stand. John Lewis ran to continue the fight. Now is the time to rise up together as one. To rise up for trans students, to rise up for our undocumented neighbors, to rise up for everyone under attack right now. So that's what I ask y'all to do, and to remember that they are only trying to silence you because you are powerful. Thank you.
Did y'all enjoy that?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah.
Yes. Let's give Royce another hand. This concludes day 1 of our IGNYTE 2025 conference. I think what Tim told me before he had to leave is that there is a reception that's going to be for our young people and everything. And I think that should be on the schedule. But please be here tomorrow. I don't know, can you bring up the schedule for tomorrow? Yeah, please be here tomorrow. And of course, Continental Breakfast will continue at 8 o'clock p.m. And then the first welcome and stuff will start around about 8:45, and then the first session will start at 9. So hopefully that everybody will come back on tomorrow. I think I'll be here half the day, but I gotta go work Atlanta Pride, y'all. I gotta go work the festival, y'all. It was my pleasure to actually be the host for the day. They're gonna have 2 different hosts for tomorrow. But please, once again, my name is Meak Evans. I'm the founder of the world's first
LGBTQ exclusive talent agency and production company known as Meak Productions Incorporated. That's MEAK as in Kite Productions with an S. You can visit us online at meakproductions.lgbt. That's meakproductions.lgbt. You can follow us on social media at Meak Productions. Today's session within this room, a lot of the panels and stuff were live streamed on our YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/Meak Productions TV. And so hopefully if everything works well, we should be here tomorrow, half a day, before we go and do our job at the festival. But thank you all so much for being a part of day one. Don't forget day two. And look to see you all this weekend. Happy Pride, y'all. You good, I got that. You good?